Hello guys, welcome back. We are going to discuss Citizens Charter today, and this is part of our ethics keyword series. Again, this is just not about definitions and examples. It is a 360-degree understanding of this particular key term which will help you to write a quality answer. Okay, let's start. Okay, now let's understand this topic, Citizens Charter, right? The genesis of or the origin of Citizens Charter was in 1991 in UK. Now they wanted to provide quality services to the citizens, and for that they brought out this Citizens Charter, right? Now one must ask this question: why is the term like citizen? I understand, right? Citizens I understand, but why it is charter, right? What is it? What does this word charter mean? Now if you remember, there is a term or there is a historical term called Magna Carta, right? It's a Latin term, right? Magna Carta is a Latin term. Now that carta, the word carta comes from, or rather, the charter comes from the word carta, right? Which means what? Which means that it is a formal promise that has been made. It is a formal promise that has been made. By whom? That's not the story now. It is a formal promise. That's a written promise that has been made, right? So we can define Citizens Charter as thus, that it is an explicit written commitment. It is an explicit written commitment, right? Explicit, right? That is clearly mentioned. Written, that is not auditory or it's not spoken, right? Commitment. This is the most important part, right? It's commitment. But you have to ask a question: commitment by whom? It is a commitment by the state, by the government, right? By the government organization to its citizens or its client groups. Right? Client groups can be any corporate house or it can be any business houses as well, right? So basically you have to understand Citizens Charter is nothing but it's an explicit written commitment by the government to whom? To the citizens and to the client group, right? Now obviously you will ask this question, it's okay, fine, like it's a commitment, but what does this commitment have, or what are the elements of this commitment? Now let's understand the elements of Citizens Charter, that these elements should feature, right, in Citizens Charter. Okay, now let's understand the elements which must feature in your Citizens Charter. Now you have to understand, as I've told you, that Citizens Charter is nothing but explicit written commitment by the government, right, to its citizens. Now in this case, which part of the government? Like government is a very generic term. So it is those particular section of the government where it is committed to provide certain kind of services, primarily services. So basically your departments, in case of states, right? In case of the center, your ministries, and within ministries there are departments as well, right? So those departments, those ministries within the state and inside the ministry, they are duty bound to have Citizens Charter with regards to the services that they are providing to the citizens. Let's take an example. Ministry of Coal. Let's say Ministry of Coal. So the first thing the Ministry of Coal should have in its Citizens Charter is that it should have its vision and the mission statement, right? So vision and the mission statement, like clear statement of the organization's mission and vision, whatever it might be. So probably if, let's say, the coal ministry wants to achieve 1.5 billion tons of coal production by the end of 2030. It could be. We have already achieved 1,000 tons of coal production, right? So that should be clearly mentioned where? That should be clearly mentioned in the mission and the vision statement. So this is the first thing. This is the first element, clearly mentioning vision and the mission statement. What is the second element that must have? The second element is that details of business transacted by the organization. Like it can be any ministry, be it coal ministry, be it steel ministry, Ministry of Steel, right? So what kind, like Ministry of External Affairs, right? It can be any ministry, but it has to have the details of what kind of businesses it is engaged in, right? Those kind of details should be there. The third element is that the client list. Client list means that that particular ministry is engaging which kind of clients, right? For example, Ministry of Women and Child Development, right? In that case, like women is there, children are there, right? Then Ministry of Social Justice, right? In Ministry of Social Justice, we have different marginalized groups, right? So these are the client lists. Like these are the, for example, widow pension, right? So widow pension, the Ministry of Social Justice, right? So that is one client, right? So that those clients should be mentioned, right? These are the people whom this particular state functioning, that is the ministry, is providing its service, right? What is the third? What is the fourth element. The fourth element is details of service provided to each client group. Again, as we mentioned, ki widow pension, right? In case of widow pension, so you have to know that how many people are being benefited, how much money is being provided. I think it's like 1,000 rupees, 1,500 rupees, right? I think it is 1,000 rupees, right? So every detail that this particular client, which belongs to this group, who gets widow pension, gets around 1,000, right? And there are the 2 lakh, 3 lakh, 4 lakh, the number of clients are these many, right? All the details should be there. And then the fifth element, now this is very important, like we are providing service, right? And a particular citizen charter should also have what? It should have details of grievance redress mechanism and how to access it. Like if there is a problem, like for example, again, let's take the example of a person who is accessing widow pension, right? And or is legally she is legally eligible to get that widow pension, and probably for some reasons she is not getting it, like she want to raise this as a grievance, right? So a citizen charter should have or should list the proper process how she can access or how she can raise this grievance. That process should be mentioned clearly. That process should be mentioned, like how to access it, like if the service she is not getting, how to access that service. Okay, last but not least, the first 5 elements is about what? It is a state's responsibility to maintain the client list. It is a state's responsibility to create this mission and vision statement. It is a state's responsibility to list down all the services that is providing. It's a state responsibility to maintain the grievance redressal mechanism and make sure that the citizens, if they are not getting the service, can raise this particular, know how to raise the grievances, right? But the last element in the citizens charter, document is the responsibility of the citizens, right? What the state is expecting from the citizens, right? What's the state? So expectation from the clients. The clients will be whom? The clients will be the citizens. Now let's understand the citizens charter holistically from the government's point of view. So we can define citizens charter, as we previously also we have understood, as that it's a document of what? It is a document of commitment, right? It's a document of commitment. This is something that you have to remember, right? Made by the government organization to its citizens, client groups, and we have studied that, right? In respect of what services, schemes being provided, right? Like whatever services or whatever the schemes. We have talked about widow pension, right? We can, it can be any other schemes. Like it can be your, your schemes on education. It can be schemes on health, right? What is the objective? The objective of citizens charter. Now this is very important because you can use it in form of a diagram in your answers. The objective is nothing but to build bridges, right? To build bridges between citizens and the administration, to streamline administration in tune with the needs of the citizens, right? To create a very healthy relationship between the state and the subject. Now, this is very important, and Citizens Charter plays a major role because it makes sure that whatever the commitments of the government is, right, is clearly stated, and the citizen can check those commitments and be ensured or be assured that yes, like I have chosen a government who has clearly given me in writing and is duty bound to make sure that those commitments are met, right? Now, let's understand its purpose and impact. So, what are the purpose? By publicly declaring standards and grievance channels, Charter aims to empower citizens. Now, this is very important. It aims to empower citizens, because it is empowering citizens, right? It is giving more power to the citizens because the citizens know these are the responsibility, these are the commitments of that department. This is a commitment of the particular ministry with regards to that particular scheme, right? It makes the officials accountable, right? This is very important. Always remember, in public administration, transparency and accountability goes hand in hand. Citizens Charter is an instrument of transparency, right? Which is used to do what? Which is used to ensure accountability, right? Which is used to make officials more accountable and improve the overall, obviously, quality and the responsiveness of the service, right? Then finally, like this is an objective fact, let's understand. India's charter initiative is housed in Ministry of Personnel, which issued guidelines to all departments to bring out focus and effective charters, right? Okay, now let's understand why, let's understand the 6 principles which is kept in mind before the Citizens Charter is designed, right? The first is quality. Now, quality is important because the genesis of Citizens Charter was to ensure quality of service, right? And the moment the thing is written, right, like these are the commitments, these are the quality service that I'm going to provide, right? It ensures what? It ensures that the government is accountable to make sure that it maintains the quality of the service. Now, it can be anything like your education, health, it can be anything, right? So, quality of service is the first principle, very important. Then comes choice wherever possible, right? The government should make sure that the citizens has choice, like choice in the sense that if the citizens are to choose one option than the other, right? Let's say that a citizen wants to choose a particular service and not the other service, right? It should have that, or it should, given that independence to make that choice, right? So choice is again a very important thing. Now standards, well, quality will only be maintained by what? Quality will only be maintained when you maintain, like we set down the standards, right? So standards are very important. So specify what to expect and how to act if standards are not met, right? That grievance redressal mechanism. Then comes your value for the taxpayers' money, right? So we cannot set a low standard, right? We cannot set a low standard in the sense because like the taxpayers are paying their money, right? And they want a proper quality service that should be given to them. They, like if I say that there will be roads built, right? That is not the standard that we should set. We should make sure that the roads built should at least go for 10 years, right? That is a quality. That is how you ensure the value of money for whom? For the citizens, right? So standard is not the only criteria. The value of money should also be kept in mind so that the standard and the value of money is commensurate with each other, right? It's similar to each other, right? Then comes your accountability. Now, what does accountability means? Now, accountability is that you have set a standard, right? The standard is said that like, okay, like in 10 years, the roads will not be washed away, right? But if the road is washed away within 2 or 3 years, the particular department, the particular ministry should be held accountable, right? They should be held accountable. In that regard, there should be proper mechanism that should be written down in the charter how they should be held accountable, right? So again, accountability not only of that individual but also of that organization, right? Then last but not least is transparency. Your rules, procedures, like grievance mechanisms, processes, everything should be detailed and should be mentioned clearly. It should be all be written. These are all written, right? It should not be like mentioned in the corners of the offices. No, it should be all written clearly so that the citizens, if they see that the standards are not met, the services are not up to that mark, right? And even if they see that the services are not provided at all, right? That is even bigger concern. Then what they can do based on the written process, right? They can go and raise concerns, right? And hold the public officials or the institutions accountable. Okay, now let's understand the significance of Citizens Charter. The first significance, the most important is that it is an instrument of administrative reform. Now you will say that how it is. It is an instrument of administrative reform because it converted itself from this strong, dispassionate, bureaucratic setup, right? Like very rigid bureaucracy to what? Citizen-centric bureaucracy. It is driven by what? It is driven by service, right? It is driven by service. So DARPG says what? Charters are define charters as promoting service-oriented administrative culture, right? That administration is not based on, as Weber would say, impersonalized structure, but it is nothing but an instrument or an organization which is driven by what? Driven by the philosophy of service, right? The second significance is that it enhances accountability and transparency. Now, this is very important, right? The moment the department has said that, these are the services, as we have seen in the principle, these are the services, these are the client list, these are the, the details of the clients that we are providing service. Like everything is written, everything is shared, right? The moment that is done, then that particular department, that particular official, that particular institution will be held accountable if the services are not matching to the promises or the commitments that they have made, right? So again, these Citizens Charter play a very important role in what? Making the departments answerable through public service standards, right? And you will find departments publicly displaying timelines and complaints procedures, right? There are many departments, there are many ministries which are displaying, their commitments, the number of steps that they have taken, the accomplishments that they have done. We see billboards which they are using as an advertisements of their commitments, right? Okay, what is the third significance? The third significance is improving service delivery, right? Citizens charters improve responsiveness of whom? Of the citizens, right? And improve responsiveness and citizen satisfactions in public offices. Like it has been seen that where the citizen charter is publicly displayed, right, the quality of service delivery has improved, right? The quality of service delivery has improved, right? Then comes promoting demand-driven governance. Now, this is very important, right? It is demand-driven. Like, I want this particular services from the government, right? So, Citizens Charter empowers citizens to demand timely and quality public service, right? Because they are aware that these are the responsibility of the particular department or the particular ministry, right? They are aware, okay, every month on 7th, the widow pension would be coming to their or the disability pension should be coming to their bank account, right? They know that because the Citizens Charter mentioned. So it is a demand of the citizen, right? You provide me with the service which you have promised, which you have committed. Last but not least, supporting governance reforms, right? So it is a major one of the major influence of Citizens Charter that it laid the foundation of citizen-centric reforms. Okay, now let's understand some of the challenges. The first challenge is the lack of consultative formulation, right? So PAC has found only 37% of the officials are, responsible or they are have been consulted in drafting this charter. The participation is very low, right? Not much enthusiasm has been shown. Again, if you don't consult, if the officials are not consulted to drafting the charter, then how would they know that they can keep the promise, right? They can keep the commitment, right? So again, lack of consultative formulation. Then poor staff ownership, right? Now, what is poor staff ownership means? That the charter is there, everything is written, right? But does the official know? Does the staff know about the charter? Does they know about their responsibility in meeting those commitment that has been mentioned in the charter? Now, it has been found very strangely in Gujarat, right? 85% of officials in surveyed departments had not trained to implement charters. They don't know how to implement the charters itself, right? Again, a very disturbing understanding, right? Then comes low public awareness, right? Most of the citizens does not even know that there is a charter, that they can claim the service, right? They don't even know about that, right? Even if there is charter, let's say the staffs and the departments, they have been trained to implement the charter, right? But if the people do not know that there is charter, then how would they raise any grievances that regarding services, right? So again, PAC or your public committee have found that 70% of citizens were unaware that the charter even exists of a service, right? We did not even know before we started our UPSC preparation, right? We did not know that there was a charter, right? Then comes no monitoring or enforcement, right? So again, until and unless there is monitoring and enforcement, like if there is a grievance redressal, right? There is somebody has raised this particular grievance, right? There should be a monitoring authority or entity to make sure that the grievances are answered or the grievances are settled, right? So again, the monitoring and the enforcement process is very, very weak. So again, charter remains merely symbolic and do not make much of a difference, right? It's just symbolic. Every department has a charter, every ministry has a charter, but again, the enforcement is very weak. Then comes your resource and system constraints, right? So if there is a charter, right, we need funds to implement those charters. It's very simple. We need funds. The reason is this, like for example, somebody has raised some issue or a grievance, right? So a fund should be there with the department to meet those grievances, right? Again, because of lack of fund also, Citizens Charter is not properly implemented. And last but not least is your scope and credibility issue, right? Like what is scope and credibility issue? There, like some charters are very lax, simply written, right? And some are very strict, right? Some charters are written in in English, right? Which again, poor people and those people who are not familiar with English cannot even understand what the charter is, right? So again, the issue is that like scope, it's very limited in scope, and credibility also, because if you can't read, right, how would you understand? Okay, now let's understand. We have seen the issues, the challenges. Now, what are the recommendations to to set Citizens Charter correct, right? Again, it's important because the word Citizen Charter is there in your syllabus, and they might ask that how you, what should the reformatory steps be? The first is consult the citizens and the staff. Consult the citizens and the staff during your charter formulation, because it's Citizens Charter, right? So you have to bring citizens. It is a major stakeholder, right? You have to ask the citizens to come and say, and to to communicate the demand that they have with the administration. Then only you can create a citizens charter. And not only the citizens, staff should also be there, because they also have to communicate the practicality of the demand that the citizen is making, right? The citizen can make any kind of demand, but the staff has to like set them and say, like, look, these are the practical things that we can do. So both the staff and the citizens should come together. It should be a consultative process when you're designing the the charter. Then, of course, if you are, it is the staff which is going to implement the charter. It is the staff which is going, so you have to train those staff how to implement it. If a citizen has raised a grievance, what are the processes of that particular staff to ensure that the grievance is properly redressed, right? Again, training is very important. Then comes a database has to be created. A database has to be created with regards to the grievances that has been raised, right? So if there are common grievances, if there are many such common grievances, for example, again, bring the issue of, let's say, old age pension or a disability pension. So let's say that a particular section of old age and disability pension, for example, who does not have Aadhaar card, are not getting that fund the center is giving them, like 1,000 rupees, right? So this is an issue, and probably most of the grievances that have been raised is pertaining to this particular issue. So if there is a proper database, then what will happen? Then that particular issue can be resolved, because it is something which needs to be fixed, so that major section of the citizens will be relieved, right? So again, database is very important, right? And then, as we said, most of the people don't know the charter is there is an existence of charter, and we have seen also something that where the charter is displayed well, the quality of the service has improved, right? The quality of the service has improved. In that regard, what should be done? In that regard, we should advertise the Citizens Charter, right? It should be like, it should have a wider publicity through print and electronic media. And of course, you need fund to not only maintain Citizens Charter, but also for the Citizens Charter to function. You need fund, right? So in that regard, proper budgetary allocation should be made, right? Proper budgetary allocation, or in case of, like, if there is a scheme, there is a cost of the scheme. So implementation of Citizen Charter, maintaining of Citizen Charter, that particular cost should be added to that particular scheme, whichever the scheme is, right? So that in that regard, the money will automatically flow. So separate designation of the particular budgetary allocation is not needed, right? Allocate dedicated budgets for awareness and staff training, right? Last but not least is replicate best practices across departments. Like, there will be certain departments, let's say the Department of Agriculture, they are doing phenomenal job in implementing like schemes, right? So if that, like, the best practices, like, you see, yes, this is a excellent way they're implementing Citizens Charter, or they're implementing services. So that should be replicated in other departments, in other ministry. These are the recommendations we have to keep in mind.